Good morning and welcome to today's HIF webinar. My name is Betsy Creer and I am the Housing Investment Fund Manager. This morning we'll discuss the HIF NOFA as well as the application processes. At the end of the presentation, I'll answer questions that have been submitted throughout the webinar, but please remember questions should only be about the NOFA and the application processes. It's not meant to address specific proposals. Now, I've listed some tips for today's webinar. First, of course, all phone lines are on mute. If you do have questions, feel free to submit those during the course of this webinar. You just go on the right-hand side of the screen, type your question, and click Send. I've also provided 3 links to our webinar handouts in case you were not able to access those documents prior to the beginning of this session. And also, the webinar will be recorded and it will be posted on our website along with the PowerPoint slides within the next several days. And then last, please be sure to complete the evaluation that will be emailed to you at the conclusion of the webinar. So the outline for today is we will be talking about the funding criteria, the threshold requirements, eligible uses, funding priorities, our housing areas of need, application process and timelines, and also reporting requirements. Now, the Housing Investment Fund has undergone some substantial revisions for this funding round, so that I'm glad you joined me for today's discussion. And so for this funding round, we wanted to ensure that the NOFA is clearly aligned with OHFA's annual plan housing goals. It helps drive OHFA's policy for affordable housing. Also to ensure the applicants have strong and demonstrated partnerships and that any proposed project can actually be put into practice and also potentially be replicated. And then last, to elicit creative and innovative ideas. We do have up to $3 million available for this funding round. As you will have seen going through the NOFA, it does outline the 10 housing needs as they're identified in our annual plan, as well as OHFA's values, the responsibility, collaboration, performance, and optimization. And it also establishes funding criteria to which the applicants will be evaluated. And these include measurable. Does the proposal have goals, objectives, and outcomes? Second, are there demonstrated partnerships and leverage? And we are going to be particularly stressing these 2 elements for this funding round because we believe that these certainly help to ensure the sustainability of a project when the HIF money has ended. Next is the use of evidence-based approaches or using scientific-based programs for decision making, and this will be used for proposals with a service component. This is being used more and more in the affordable housing industry. And even last year, HUD began a new publication called Evidence Matters to help drive their future policy directions based on actual research and data. And then last, policy implications. We want to make sure the proposals align with OHFA's annual plan goals. It furthers our mission and potentially can help drive our policy. It's important to remember that a proposed project or program meets all the threshold requirements as they are listed here. First, benefit households with incomes at or below 120% AMI. Second, be for housing needs and our populations not addressed by other OHFA programs. So, for example, a request for additional gap financing for a new housing tax credit development would not be eligible. We received a number of proposals last year, as we did in previous funding rounds, for projects that really could have been funded through tax credits or gap financing. So it's important to ensure that your proposed project is not only innovative, but it's also outside of the programs OHFA normally funds. Also, the applicant must be currently in good partnership with OHFA, document the commitment of matching funds, demonstrate partnerships, and certainly the application must be fully complete. And we'll discuss the application process in just a few minutes. Now, the eligible uses of the HIF fund have not substantially changed from last funding round, so I'm not going to take the time to go through each of the bulleted items. However, I will draw your attention to the first 3 items because we will be paying particular attention to those with the submissions. Those are connecting housing to services and jobs, promoting revitalization by addressing vacant housing, and provisional services for special needs populations through evidence-based approaches. The 2012 NOFA focuses on 3 funding priorities, including affordable housing stability, sustainability, and revitalizing neighborhoods. First, housing stability. We think it's important to focus a bit more this year on using housing as a platform by connecting housing with services and jobs in order to improve the quality of life for residents and also stabilize affordable housing communities. This funding priority really addresses the question, can we improve the multifaceted problems in residents' lives, such as unemployment, crime, poor schools. So ultimately, we can improve the housing conditions, increase resident attainment, and reduce vacancy rates. Now, for this funding category, priority will be given to proposals that focus on individuals who are at or below very low income, which is 50% AMI, they're homeless, at risk of losing affordable housing, or special needs populations. And special needs populations may include, but certainly not limited to, adults aging out of foster care, disabled veterans, persons with disabilities, and also the elderly. Now, you may have noticed that within the NOFA, for each of the 3 funding priorities, we have listed strategies or proposals that will be considered. It's important to remember that these strategies are not all inclusive. They simply are meant to provide general ideas as to what we will consider. So first, for the stability category, some strategies or proposals that we will consider, but not limited to: first, translating evidence-based approaches to affordable housing setting. There are several innovative programs going on around the country right now using evidence-based approaches. For instance, in Vermont, they have what they call the SASH program, Supportive Services Home Program, and this is for an elderly housing project. And within the project, they coordinate health care, social needs of the residents by using the housing as a platform for providing integrated health care. It's really a system for long-term aging in place. And what they found after 1 year is that 19% of the hospital admissions were reduced, and none of the residents had to be moved to nursing homes. So they are currently expanding this program due to its success to other housing projects. Another one is in Denver, Colorado, called the Bridge program. And this is where they actually are using comprehensive out-of-school programs in the project itself. And what they're doing is focusing on the whole child, not just the education. So they're looking at risk factors such as family history, unemployment, and crime. So this program has had so much success that they are now expanding it to 4 other housing projects. Another proposal that we will consider are senior living enhancement programs. And these are simply using alternative models of health and social service delivery that lead to community empowerment, engagement, and/or independence. So some of the examples, for instance, could be getting efforts to get seniors involved and connected to the community. Healthcare technologies such as clinical e-stores or in-home telemedicine programs that link seniors with hospitals to age in place could also be considered. The second funding priority is sustainability. This category priority focuses on the long-term maintenance of housing through preservation and development of new technologies to reduce energy consumption. Now, for this category, we're seeking innovative proposals that actively promote healthy designs and infrastructure improvements to include elements of visitability and universal design for households who are at or below 120% AMI. So some of the strategies are proposals that we will consider in this category, but again, certainly not limited to: first, designing housing that can be used by all. There's a lack of affordable housing that's accessible, but even more so that's accessible and usable throughout a person's lifespan. We have all different kind of best practices models for universal design, but how do we really know what is the best? The idea here is to keep housing viable and sustainable while also meeting the growing trends in housing to adequately address the aging and disabled populations. Clearly, OPUS QAP addresses minimum specifications for accessibility standards, but it doesn't really focus on the needs of the elderly or the disabled. We want here to focus more on the human conditions of the design decisions, not just focus on the building itself, but those who are living in the building. The hope is that we can get proposals that possibly could help drive our policy on future QAPs regarding universal design, also so that then we can have housing for the widest range of users. Other proposals that we will consider are programs or activities that sustain and preserve existing affordable housing through mitigating threats to at-risk properties and also contribute to neighborhood revitalization. At-risk properties are defined with those that have vacancy rates of more than 10%, mortgage delinquencies, the age of the project, functional obsolescence, expiring HAP contracts, and decreased physical asset condition due to deferred maintenance. Also, other proposals that we will consider are those that promote renewable energy investments and energy efficiency for housing projects, such as advancing new green products that actually go beyond enterprise green standards. We think that this has important relevance given the continued expansion of the fracking industry and its potential impact on the economy as well as housing itself. Now, there are already a number of housing authorities around the country that are using experimental technologies in affordable housing settings. For instance, out in California, they received a grant of over $1.8 million for solar housing. And they're now using this in several of their affordable housing projects, and they are actually using the savings of that to go into their green job creation programs. Another is St. Louis Housing Authority, where in 2010 they began installing solar panels to 4 of its mixed income properties and also at its headquarters. And while the Housing Authority is still collecting data, they clearly are expecting that the common area energy costs will be reduced by 20 to 25%. Now, the third funding priority or category is revitalizing neighborhoods. Originally, this funding priority was to be combined with sustainability because in many ways the priorities do cross over. For instance, by revitalizing community, you are sustaining housing. But it's really such an important issue that it needed to stand alone, especially given Ohio has well over 600,000 vacant and abandoned homes. For this funding priority, we will seek innovative proposals that enhance local efforts to address vacant and abandoned housing and prevent foreclosure in targeted geographic neighborhoods. Now, the key here is comprehensive redevelopment. It's not just building 2 homes at one end of the street and 2 homes at the other end of the street, but it has to be a strategy. Some of the strategies are proposals that we will consider, but again, not limited to, first, building capacity and comprehensive redevelopment. Priority will be given to proposals that align workforce development and employment. We think this is especially important because this is an issue that's high on the governor's agenda. To tie housing to jobs, especially since Ohio has well over 63,000 job vacancies simply because the employers cannot find skilled workers. The governor is stressing partnerships with education and businesses in order to develop satellite campuses near companies that need the skilled labor. And this is already occurring. For instance, Honda, they have used housing around educational campuses. And so I think it's all agreed that education goes hand in hand with economic development, especially in those areas that need to have development. The key here is not to benefit the company itself, but provide stable housing and hopefully keep our educated workers here in Ohio. So it's hoped that we'll receive some applications that promote this strategy. There are several innovative programs around the country that are using this type of strategy. For instance, in New Orleans, teachers. After Katrina's aftermath, and so in return, the teachers committed to teaching for 3 years in the public school system. Another is North Carolina, where they have the Purple Heart Homes. This is where they converted foreclosed housing to housing specifically for disabled veterans. So now let's talk about the HIF application process. And importantly, there is a funding limitation placed in this funding year, as has been in previous funding rounds, in that a project that's awarded HIF money is ineligible to receive funding this round just simply in order to sustain the project unless a waiver is requested and approved. A waiver can only be requested and approved if the applicant plans to begin a new housing program or expand the scope of the existing OHFA funded grant, and also demonstrate that it furthers our annual plan goals. And we'll talk about the waiver process here in just a couple of minutes. So for the 2012 funding round, we require both a pre-application and a full application. And this is significantly different from the previous funding rounds. So with the applications, first they have to align with OHFA's annual plan housing needs and values, meet one or more of the eligible uses, meet all of the threshold requirements, demonstrate partnerships and leverage, and also be complete. Now, some of the exclusions from this funding round include capital improvements and IDA accounts. As in past funding rounds, we will not accept applications for capital improvement projects such as replacement of a roof. However, energy efficiency improvements, especially those that go beyond the Enterprise Green standards, are exploring the use of renewable energy technologies will be considered because these tie into the goal of sustainability and also innovation. Previously awarded projects will also be ineligible for funding unless a waiver is approved. And last, only one application will be accepted per organization. Now, the application process for this funding round includes 3 components. And it's important to remember that in order to submit a full application, applicants must submit a pre-application and attend the HIF forum. Applicants who only submit a pre-application but they do not attend the HIF forum will be ineligible to apply with a full application. So first, the pre-application process. There really is no template pre-application form. Rather, it is a summary that should contain all the items that are listed in the application instructions specifically on the last page of that instructions document. And we have included a link to this actual document. So some of these items include, first, project description. How will the proposed project address housing needs and our populations not addressed by other OHFA programs? Second, a list of potential partnerships with communities, public-private organizations, and governments that will actually be involved in the project. Next, description of the applicant's experience and capacity to successfully implement the project. The amount and source of all projected matching funding. Applicants really should indicate the source of the matching funding and if it has already been committed. Next is the expected outcomes and goals of the project. Applicants must also describe how the project goals will be measured. And then last, a projected timeline. Now, the proposal is limited to 5 pages only. So again, for this funding round, projects awarded HIF money in previous rounds are ineligible to receive future HIF funding, including this round, unless a waiver is approved. So for a waiver, we don't have a template waiver form. Rather, applicants who wish to request a waiver must submit a 5-page proposal, as we just discussed. Next, clearly identify in the proposal that a waiver is being requested. I think the cover letter would be a good place to indicate a waiver is requested that clearly identifies the currently funded HIF project name and also the grant agreement number. Also within the proposal, the applicant requesting a waiver must explain first, how is the proposed project different from the one already funded? Meaning, how does it expand the current program to meet OHFA's annual plan goals? And then also provide the outcomes and results from the current project. All proposal summaries will be submitted to the attention of myself through email at bkrieger@ohiohome.org. And all proposals are due October 19th. Now, the second component of the application process is the HIF form, which will be held on November 15th. Only applicants who submit a pre-application are eligible to attend. Now, the reason that we have a pre-application process is that we believe it should not only help potential applicants to begin fully developing the proposed project, but also allow OHFA staff to appropriately structure the forum. The forum is an opportunity to discuss with OHFA staff the proposed project and receive feedback, comments, or suggestions. The forum will also provide an opportunity to ask additional questions regarding the NOFA, funding priorities, and the application process. Now, I want to emphasize that OHFA staff will not be scoring or rating the pre-applications and then using that scoring to invite certain individuals to submit a full application. Rather, the submission of a full application is contingent only on the applicant meeting all the requirements as we've talked about, and the applicant submitting a pre-application and also attending the HIF forum. Now, the third component of the application process is the application itself. The application will be web-based. It will be an online document, and we are going to have more information that will follow on this application within the next several weeks. Applications will be evaluated through a review or scoring criteria structure. And so this structure includes need up to a maximum of 25 points. This is the extent to which the applicant provides a uniquely valuable service or project for the community. It fills a gap in available housing services that cannot be provided through other means, and also furthers the achievement of OHFA's annual plan goals. Second is targeting up to a maximum of 10 points. And projects that promote programs for very low-income households, which are again at or below 50% AMGI, and also target underserved populations. Next is organization and financial viability. This is the extent to which the applicant demonstrates the ability to successfully implement the proposed project. Next is staff experience. Projects will be evaluated based on the degree to which the applicant demonstrates sufficient background and experience to really carry out the proposed project. All applications will require resumes for key staff that will be involved in the project. Next is program feasibility. This is the extent to which the proposal is reasonable and cost-effective based on the requested amount, the need, and the proposed outcomes. Next, program sustainability, and this is the extent to which applicants demonstrate long-term sustainability of the proposed project. Applicants should submit a plan to continue the proposed project after the HIF funds have ended. Demonstrated partnerships. This is the extent to which the applicant demonstrates creation of new or established partnerships that will be involved in the project. Next is matching funding. This is leveraged to the greatest extent possible of other funds and resources. In-kind resources are discounted here up to 2 points when considering the funds leveraged. Next is a timeline. This is the extent to which the applicant has a documented timeline of the project to include estimated dates for completion of goals and outcomes. And then last, goals and evaluation tools. This is the extent to which the applicant has identified objectives and outcomes for the project. Outcomes must be quantified for each activity or program within the project itself. And also applicants must demonstrate how they plan to evaluate the proposed project. Now, the full application will be due on November 16th. Actually, it will be issued on November 16th and will be due on January 31st. Applicants who are awarded HIF funding must comply to certain reporting requirements. Now, there's been one change in the reporting requirements from last year. And this change is that a grantee must continue to submit an annual progress report for 5 years after the grant agreement has ended. This will allow OHFA to track metrics and also effectively monitor the project's progress and sustainability. The reporting requirements include submission of a quarterly progress report, and the quarterly reports will be due within 30 days after the last day of each fiscal quarter. We also will require submission of an annual progress report, which is due on December 31st of each calendar year of the grant period. There also will be a closeout report when the grant has ended. And then last, OHFA will conduct monitoring visits of the project as warranted. These visits will be announced in advance, and the grantee will receive a copy of our monitoring report. So I've listed here some key dates to remember. First is October 19th. This is when the pre-applications are due. Next is November 15th from 1 to 3 o'clock. This is the HIF forum, and it will be held here in our offices in our boardroom. Next is November 16th, where the HIF full application will be issued. And then January 31st, where the HIF applications are due. We do anticipate sometime in May of next year that we will have notification of the project selected for board approval. At this point, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. Again, please remember that you can continue to submit questions by looking at the right-hand side of the screen, typing in your question, and hitting send. Now, in closing, I appreciate you joining for today's webinar. And just a few reminders, this webinar has been recorded and it will be posted to our website along with today's PowerPoint slides. Also, be sure to complete